Hey folks, welcome back to the channel, your home for all content Marvel Mystic Mayhem. Today's video is going to be another video in the Worth the Whale series. If you are new to the channel, the Worth the Whale series is basically where I tell you whether a new character that has come out is worth spending your keys on. And we're going to kind of, separate it out into free to play, light spender, spender. If you are any of those levels, should you be spending on this particular character? And subject of today's video is Mr. Fantastic. The MF, the MFer, I guess Mr. Fantasticer there, not MFer. Let's talk about him. If you are a spender, I think it makes sense to spend keys on him. He's a pretty decent character. I enjoy playing him. He's got a great kit. But I think if you're a light spender, or maybe you're free to play who wants to spend on Fantastic Four here, you've got some keys saved up. I think the big question a lot of people have is, should I be spending my keys on Invisible Woman, or should I be spending my keys on Fantastic, or on Mr. Fantastic here? So I will tell you that I have Invisible Woman at 1 dupe and her highlights, and I have Mr. Fantastic at 2 dupes and his highlight. Okay, so relatively even, but a little bit of an edge there to Mr. Fantastic. If we go to Nightfall here, I am not, I guess I'm in the top 100, but not saying this is the, the ultimate end game way to do Nightfall here, but at 2-4-19, I was able to achieve that with a team that was built on around Mr. Fantastic without Invisible Woman, and I was also able to achieve that same score with a team that was built around Invisible Woman and didn't have Mr. Fantastic. So in that particular sense, they were sort of even. But, and this is a big but here, I think Invisible Woman would be able to achieve this score with less dupes, Soul Saga stuff. I do think she probably needs her highlight to do something like this, but I think she needs less investment to be as competitive in Nightfall. She's also a beast in Bifrost Brawl, and that's important for a lot of people. So I think the edge basically goes to Invisible Woman. If you are going to pull on one of them, my recommendation is probably Invisible Woman. That may be a little bit confusing because I ranked Mr. Fantastic higher in the tier list, and I think I've changed my mind about that. But they were right next to each other, so, and I did give myself an out in that video. But if you did pull Mr. Fantastic, maybe on an early pull, or you just like him or whatnot, or you're a spender, I just kind of want to go through how I set him up. And this is not going to be some sort of ultimate Mr. Fantastic guide, but I'm going to share with you sort of my thoughts and how I've had some decent success with him. So let's quickly go through parts of his kit, because there's some things I do want to talk about here, starting with his 2 mana attack outreach effort here. So this is one of his stuns. He gets 2, right? His stun happens, though, when you do a collision. The upgrade here applies a debuff. It's a pet peeve of mine, I guess, that they don't say that this is a debuff that gets applied to enemies. I think that's important for, when you're team building. If there are characters you want to put with him that do more damage based on debuffs, it's good to know that this is not just some random thing that happens. It does apply a debuff. I guess I'd appreciate it if it was in the text. But that's maybe a story for a different day. Okay, so the other thing I want to talk about, though, with this 2 mana attack is that I think I was really thinking about it wrong, and I've had to rewire how I think you should use this attack. So originally, how I thought it was going to work was essentially you use this attack, you pull a character in, it does some sort of collision, but it sort of, bumps that character up that it collided with, and the character that you grabbed continues to be pulled towards you. And then as a result, both characters are stunned, or however many characters are stunned that you pulled through. And now that enemy that you pulled is right next to you, and you can continue to do basic attacks, take that enemy out first. So in that particular scenario, right, then you would use this move to do something like pick out a healer in the backline, pick out a DPS in the backline. You can get them, you can stun them, you can do damage to them right away, and then sort of bring them in within Mr. Fantastic's range. That is not how it works. But basically what happens, right, is if you collide with an enemy, the enemy that you pulled stays on the other side of that enemy, which means that you have to be cautious about who you're pulling, because if you're pulling an enemy that's far away and there's another enemy that's close to that far away enemy, then they're just going to stop there. And that's not maybe what you want, because he does kind of some more up close personal basic attacks. So I think the way I want to use the skill maybe moving forward is more as like a crowd control for enemies around him. So if somebody's giving me a hard time, I can pull another enemy in to sort of stun them and do something like that, or just take a little bit less damage, or maybe set myself up for his AoE here. So speaking of, Bouncing Ball is his other move. 3 mana, 2 and 3 mana attacks are pretty great, to be honest with you. Let's keep this move in mind because a lot of his his highlight has got a specific call out to the skill, and then Soul Saga also is a specific call out to the skill. And so we're gonna come back to this, but I do like this attack. It does stun again. Let's move on to his passive here. At first I was confused. I thought this was kind of just sort of a mediocre passive. Actually, that hasn't changed. But I was confused as to why this is in here. And I think the only reason it's in here is if you're going to run a team that's Mr. Fantastic, Human Torch, and Invisible Woman, he needs to be the frontliner. He needs to be a little bit more tanky. The one thing I don't like about it is that part of his Soul Saga, one of his nodes in Soul Saga, extends this, which is fine, but I don't know. I think that's the least interesting part of his kit, I suppose. That's just his basic, which actually, you know, looking at this icon, I kind of wish that his basic wasn't just right next to him, right? And that like there was, at least on the maybe like a first hit, he could be like one tile away and he starts to do some sort of like wind up haymaker with his arm, and then he sort of throws his punch. And even if it's like as he's entering a tile that's adjacent to an enemy, I think that would be a really nice touch and kind of cool to see that he actually uses his like extendable arms to go gadget sucker punch somebody. All right, let's talk about the thing, probably the most important skill he has though, which is his ultimate here. 400, it's a little steep, but grants all allies 100 ultimate energy, which is big. And so I think the idea here is that you grant allies ultimate energy with his ultimate. He puts a buff on them that increases ult damage. And now that they all have ultimate energy, you've hopefully gotten your other characters up. So, right, if you're running with Scarlet Witch or Iron Man or something, you pop his ultimate, and now Iron Man has his ultimate, or Scarlet Witch has her ultimate, and now they have increased ultimate damage as well, right? This is kind of important too, because I want to make a kind of a comparison back to Invisible Woman here. This is, I think, anecdotal testing here. I found that characters who were just affected by Invisible Woman's kit could do much more damage with their ultimate than with his Infinity Formula kit here. But both of them have kind of some interesting, they both have a buff and a debuff that they apply. So I think they're going to probably be pretty good long term, because boosting ultimate damage and being able to apply debuffs is going to be good in Nightfall for probably the foreseeable future. But Invisible Woman, yeah, characters seem to work a little bit better with doing more damage with Invisible Woman in my experience. Maybe that's just anecdotal though. But I really like this ultimate move. It is probably his best move. Let's go back to Bouncing Ball though, and we'll use that as a transition to talk about highlights. So I have his highlight here. Basically gives him HP and attack increase after he uses his ultimate. And then also importantly here, while in Fantastic Formula status, so after he's used his ultimate, Bouncing Ball will always deal a critical hit. You combine that with Heart 1 here, right? Bouncing Ball deals 30% more damage, and its damage is considered ultimate move damage. That means the sort of setup that they want you to use here is very much use the ultimate, right? Now he's got Infinity Formula. That means it's also going to do crit. It's 100% crit chance on his dash here on Bouncing Ball. Plus it's going to be boosted by Infinity Formula because it is considered ultimate move damage. Plus there were some other stats that, you know, get boosted on top of that. So this starts to hit sort of like a truck. If you don't have his highlight though, I think some of these are just fine. Yeah, you can just boost his attack after using the ultimate move to the wearer deals 30% more damage. I'm not sure I really like that. I think if I didn't have his highlight, one of the options I would consider doing here is actually Echo's highlight. And the reason for that is because it gives energy generation here. Whereas energy generation increases by 24%. He doesn't do follow-up attacks, but who cares? This is just an additional energy generation. And I think because you want to be spamming his ultimate as much as possible, that's probably the most important stat there, which transitions us to talking about artifacts. The stats you should be focusing on for Mr. Fantastic are energy gen, energy gen, energy gen, and then crit damage and maybe attack after. But energy gen first and foremost. So I think that means the gamma mutagen is basically a shoe-in. You should be using that with him. Obviously, if it has energy gen on that as well, that's a big bonus. I've been using Cosmic Cube with him. If you one of the things I feel like you have to do in this game is you have to be swapping your uniques around quite a bit. You can't just leave them on one character, especially for something like Cosmic Cube. But if you want to use Cosmic Cube on somebody else in your lineup, or you hate swapping artifacts, then I think another option here is either ID card, just to act as more of a support role, or Midnight Gun, so you can boost his crit damage. The idea there being, if you have, his first Soul Saga and his highlight, basically you just want to make sure that you're doing a bunch of damage with his bouncing ball. And you can get that to hit pretty hard. I will say it can do pretty well. So speaking of Soul Sagas, then I think it makes a lot of sense to just go up this side on the left here, because his second node here is for energy generation. This third one is fine. Outreach effort deals more, more damage. It's a 2 mana cost skill though, and I think that's probably good. That's nice. And then this actually kind of annoys me about him. I think this is probably the weakest part of his kit. There's a whole Soul Saga node that is dedicated to reducing his damage, and it's twice as long. I think that makes it 16 seconds. Yeah, so it'll make it 16 seconds. So that's pretty decent, especially if he keeps popping skills off, and it makes him more of a tank. That's fine. I just don't like it that much. This is crazy though. Okay, let me show you this first. Attack increase 100 or by 15%, gain 100 ultimate energy at the start of battle. That's massive with a 400 cost ultimate. That's definitely worth it. I just don't think it's worth going up that side first. But this is crazy. Allies affected by Fantastic Formula deal 70% more crit damage. That will be massive. So much further down the line, when we have more access to dupes for the vast majority of the player base, that will be a really, really awesome node to unlock there. I think that's all I want to say about Mr. Fantastic. I enjoy playing him. I think he's sort of he's got great themed kit, and I think importantly, Fantastic Four, so him and Sue, and are not super overpowered. I was a little bit worried after Captain America banner that every other character that came out was like, you have to get this character because they're just broken. And that hasn't quite happened yet. I think you would be okay skipping both Invisible Woman and Mr. Fantastic if you're free to play. There are lots of other great options out there. They're obviously good characters, but they sort of hit a sweet spot of like, this is a good character and it applies for the current content and maybe some future content like the next Nightfall coming out. But they're not completely broken, and I think they kind of struck the right amount of balance there with that. But that's it from me. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.